So David, you just came back from New York City with a sold-out crowd, and I mean, it's amazing how all this is really starting to take now. And we were talking off camera. It's not just people who've been into metaphysical stuff or UFO, ET stuff. It's all kinds of people across the board. And you said there was even some hip-hop happening or surrounding your work.
Yeah. I got told this a few years ago because I did an interview, just a live interview on a stage with someone at a music thing in Manchester in England, and it was a hip-hop thing. This is years ago now, really. And the man used to be, I think, was the manager of a group called Public Enemy, which seems a lot of people know of. And he was asked who he wanted to interview, and they got me up there and he interviewed me on stage. And he said, you know, your stuff in New York in the hip-hop arena is really big. And I just went in one ear and out the other, really. I thought, well, that's nice, and got on with my life. And then when I went to New York this week, and I realized just how much it had grown. And it's very much relevant to your question, because this has come out of not, you know, the esoteric or the you know, what tends to happen with the whole conspiracy is that people come into it in different ways. So they start investigating UFOs, they get interested, they realise there's a block on that information. Why? What's going on? Then they step into the wider conspiracy. And in my case, I wanted to know why information that challenged the religious and scientific version of reality was not in the schools and the colleges all those years ago, and that got me into the bigger conspiracy. But what's happening now is that people are coming to this from the realization, not least from personal experience and the way the world's going, that the world is not run by forces they thought it was run by, and the world is not like they thought it was. Something's not right. And when you are coming from where a lot of the genuine rap singers are coming from, as opposed to the corporate
the corporate ones, right?
Like Jay-Z and all these people.
Right.
Oh, look how rich I am. I've got a big car and I've got something that shines. I'm successful. Isn't it funny how, you know, they've taken music from the street and transferred it into the music of corporate greed and materialistic claptrap as a symbol of success. I mean, it's just grotesque to me. But the genuine rap singers, they're talking about social justice, fairness, equality of opportunity. And what they're beginning to see, and many have seen for some time, is that this conspiracy I'm talking about is the very network that blocks all those things. It doesn't want any of those things. It wants the few to have it all and the rest to have the droppings from the plate. And they've now started to see, although, of course, from their own experience, they saw that was it. There's the few with all the money and there's the rest of us down here. Now they're starting to see why that is in terms of the structure that makes it happen, and also that it's done not by some natural process, but by systematic manipulation. And so this is a new stage in all this, because when people from that background start to move into this, you're talking vast numbers of people. There's not, you know, amazing numbers of people are into UFOs. There's a lot, and all the rest of the stuff. But people who believe in some kind of social justice, enormous. And when they start to see that this is where social injustice comes from systematically, then we can start to move very, very large numbers of people into challenging this system, because that's the next stage. That's the next stage, taking the game to the game players.
Well, and Scott and I have known you for a few years now. We hook up with you here and there around the world, and one of the things I'm noticing, even when we were recently in England at your Brixton event, is even though you can't necessarily give the names per se to protect people's own identities, there are very high-profile people that are beginning to show up at these events from very quarters that you would not suspect to be there, whether it comes from various kind of royal lines, so to speak,
Right.
or whether it comes from more like agency lines. You're having, and former, not bloodline, but what am I, elite lines and such. You're having all these people show up as well, not just the people in the street, which is, that's where I think the support obviously is going to end up coming from, but even beyond that, surprising.
Yeah, one of the ones I did in Brixton this year, the first one, we had to do a second one because the interest in the first one was so massive. A friend of mine, Mike Lambert, who works in the kind of scientific health area, he'd been to an event at the Royal Society, this like bastion of global scientific
Yes.
orthodoxy.
Yes.
And he came to the event, and there was about 4 or 5 people, mainstream scientists, from that event at the Royal Society which he'd attended. And he like went, "What the hell are you doing here?" And one of them said, "Because we've come to hear it like it really is." Because they can't say that, because their funding would go, they'd be ridiculed by their profession. And so they decide to stay within the bounds while coming to see someone who's going outside the bounds. What I would say is, you know, what do you gain by that? What do you gain by compromising your principles? You know, okay, so what's the use of being a scientist except for your salary and your nice income? What is the value of pursuing something every day and standing on stages at conferences and talking about it when you know most of it's not true? What's the point? And this is the next stage of going from awareness to making changes in ourselves to reflect that awareness. And for me, we now reach the point where there are large numbers of people who can see that there's a conspiracy. They can see that the world's a stitch-up, that politics is a stitch-up, and banking and all the rest of it. But we've reached the stage now where the awareness is greater, but most people are still on the other side of the street. And now they're better informed to see their own prison being built before their eyes. So
And still not knowing how to get out exactly, because they still have to take care of their families, etc.
yeah, but it's like, you know, we've reached the point where instead of the prison being built out of our awareness, we're now seeing it. And it's like, see, I knew that's what they do. I told you, didn't I? And it's like, okay, but what's the next stage after that? If we're just going to take this information and allow ourselves to see the prison being built as we weren't seeing it before, then one thing changes, you can see the prison. One thing doesn't change, the prison goes on being built. And what I'm seeing, and I saw this in New York, this energy among a number of people I met, as they're crossing the street, instead of saying, I wonder what the next move is of the control system, they're saying, well, what's my next move?
Right.
And there was a guy there called Luke from We Are Change, New York, and what he does, goes on the internet with some friends of his and looks through all the information channels to find out where people who are manipulating or are agents of the manipulation, i.e. politicians, where they are in a public event or a public situation, and they go off with a camera and a microphone and they ask them all the questions that mainstream media won't ask. And he was showing me some of the clips where he doorstepped Tony Blair and Jacob Rothschild and such like. And he's also done Zbigniew Brzezinski and others, and Gore. He did Larry Silverstein, the guy who bought the lease with Frank Lowy
the World Trade
for
Center.
the Twin Towers just a few weeks before it came down. And when they took over the lease, they vastly increased the insurance in the case of a terrorist attack. Not only that, it was a real bad business deal on the face of it, because the Twin Towers had all that asbestos, which would have cost more to remove than actually knock them down. Somebody was telling me while I was there. But anyway, when you see these people being confronted with the questions they don't want to answer, their faces just drain of colour. They don't know where they're coming from, and someone's taking the game to them. And he was telling me that I think it was Al Gore, where a We Are Change group did this to him in one city. Then he went to another city, they did it to him again, and eventually he cancelled his tour of book signings.
Interesting.
Now this is us taking the game to the